All right, guys. Today, we're going over Chapter 11 and Chapter 12. This one, in particular for Chapter 12, is taking a look at how peers create a motivational climate, or the opposite, right? Feeling unmotivated. We talked in the last chapter about how moms influence children. There needs to be more research about how fathers do and what that entails. And then we also talked about coaches and athletes. And now we're actually looking at our peers, people we work around, our friends, etc. Well, that did not click. Let's try one more time. There we go. Okay. So the main theory here is the achievement goal theory, where with the motivational climate, when performing achievement-related tasks, the theory is individuals can fluctuate in their state of involvement, directed towards task or ego goals. So this theory is we are more efficient to achieving something or less efficient based on is it more task related or ego related, which is really interesting because task related is going to be in the sense of I am going to help my team score 2 goals today. I'm going to help us win. We're going to win this game. This is something finite and concrete. While ego goals seems to be more related to comparing us to others, peers. I must be better than Timmy. I perceive myself as being better at soccer than Timmy. Therefore, in a practice, he beats me or does better than me. I have a negative self-view now. This influenced me to create a state where I'm not performing at my best. So we can kind of see the traps that we can fall into, that based on if the ego goal is healthy or not, it can be negative or positive towards achieving a goal. If it is task related and is not overwhelming, it can be positive. If the task is overwhelming, my team is not very good at soccer, my task related goal is I'm going to not just win for my team, I'm going to score 10 points. Sounds like a pretty high mountain to climb that probably has a high chance for failure. In failing that, not having a attainable goal, we now have a negative climate. I perceive myself as incapable, I'm depressed, I don't feel good, etc. Hopefully you guys get the gist. Of these peer-created environments that we have, they relate to the children's goals and how they originate those goals, what their intrinsic motivations look like, and perception of physical competence. These peers include teachers, sporting heroes, friends. And so and then each of these, the physical competence, the intrinsic motivations, and environment, all influence each other dependently. So it's not step 1, step 2, step 3. It's like a circle, and we have arrows pointing to each one. So if I have a positive environment where there's lots of motivation intrinsically, all my peers have the same goal orientations, and I have high perception of physical competence. If I go into a task-related goal that is attainable, we're probably going to have a really positive motivational climate. If we take the exact opposite, and we have an ego goal that I need to be better than Timmy, I have a high physical competence perception, I have high intrinsic motivation, but my goal orientations are ego-based. If I lose, it may not matter, right, how intrinsically motivated I am. It may not matter what my perceptions of physical competence is. I may lose motivation, and I may lose confidence in myself. So hopefully that creates a picture for you guys where it is a circle and all these are relating to each other. And we just need one to go bad. We just need one to have our confidence misplaced to create a cascade effect. So, of the dimensions of peer climate, like what actually makes up how we create this environment around us and our friends, for an example, is we have improvement, so encouraging, actually getting feedback. We have equal treatment. Everyone actually feels like an individual and important on the team. The relatedness support. So is there a friendly atmosphere? Are we fostering a friendly atmosphere? Is there cooperation among the team or the friend group? Is there effort? Is the competition, so number 6, inter-team competition, healthy? Are we promoting individual competition and comparison in a healthy way as opposed to an unhealthy way of I must be better than these individuals, or I'm going to try to be better than Colton and in so improve us both? Kind of a changing in framework, right? Changing in mindset. Is the conflict extremely negative, and a lot of it? So is there inter-team conflict? Is it showing unsupported behaviors like blaming each other? On normative ability, what we interact with, normative is like the standard, so the standard of the team, what we consider normal, really, normative, normal. Are we interacting with that with the most competent teammates? So am I feeling like I am working with a normative team that also does well, that we have a standard that we all operate on? Or is it I'm the best one on my team and the rest are really bad? That would also create a not great environment, right? I'm having to try 10 times harder to make up for my team's lack of skills. And then I may create a maybe not necessarily a negative self-view, right? Because if I think I'm better, then I have a high self-view. But I would be discouraged because we're constantly losing, playing a game like soccer that's team-based. We have autonomy support, which we talked about in the last chapter, right? So this is the ability for us and peers to make decisions for ourselves, and it's not necessarily over-controlling. We get autonomy. How do we react to mistakes? So how do us and our friends react to making mistakes? Do we punish them? Are there positive and negative reactions? Am I supporting Colton when he misses the goal and say, dude, great effort. Next time, let's try to do this pass instead or this play. But I saw the effort there. Or it's like, dude, you suck. Like you completely missed and you ruined the game for us. Completely different, ways to approach it. And then evaluation of competence. So how we evaluate ourselves compared to the standard, the normative criteria of the team, as well as how we see ourselves in relation to our own criteria. Do I think I'm good enough to play this sport? All these different dimensions affect the environment. And so it'll affect how we react and how they react to us. If I have a very negative self-view and a peer comes up to me and gives me, providing feedback and cooperation and effort, they tell me, Caleb, you're doing a really great job, but I have a very negative self-view, probably won't react very well, right? We'll just brush it off. Oh, thanks, but I actually think I'm terrible, or I think they're lying to me. These different ones between physical competence, perception, intrinsic motivation, and our goal orientations, they affect these different scales. So what they did to actually measure this is cool that we understand that our environment shapes us and we shape our environment, but how do we have any type of quantitative measurement? And so they came up with this peer motivational climate and youth support questionnaire, lots of words, right? That has a point scale system. So we have 1 is strongly disagree and 7 is strongly agree. And they've definitely found some correlations between these different factors of improvement, relatedness support, so just being supported, effort, inter-team competition and ability, and inter-team conflict. Based on how high or low we scored in these, do we feel like we help each other improve? Do we care about people's opinions? Seem to have a decent correlation with actual performance on the field. So we were able to set here, give a questionnaire, and based on the scoring, it had some relation to did these athletes do better or worse out in the field. And they also compare this to academic too. So this one is used obviously for athletes, but it can be in the academic realm as well. Do I feel like my friends support me? Are we commenting on each other's efforts? Is it a lot of conflict and competition? They go hand in hand. So we talked about, right, the self-esteem, the enjoyment, and sport commitment. Going into a little bit more detail, we have not just self-esteem, but the approval or disapproval of our own physical self. Overall self-esteem is an important component of overall self-esteem for many people. Sorry, I misspoke. Our enjoyment, right? The main reason for participation is, do we actually enjoy it? Is it a healthy climate to be in? And then the commitment to the sport. So actually wanting to improve, actually continuing participation, and then do we have the social support provided by significant figures in our life to continue? My son Clark could love soccer all day long, but if I was not very supportive of that sport or very supportive of him to play it, it would probably start to discourage him, right? If I was like, I don't really want to take you to practice. I think the sport's so boring. I don't think you're doing very good. It can even influence him to start to have a lower self-esteem. I'm a significant other for Clark. I'm his parent. In summary, research-wise, it's still new. They know at least there is a improvement with physical self-esteem, enjoyment, and commitment if the motivational climate is positive. So if they score higher on the right questions of highly agree, and the bad questions of like, is there a lot of conflict, it's highly disagree, they do know it improves physical self-esteem, enjoyment, and commitment. In those different realms of like what is actually improving, that is to still be determined. So is it directly related to performance, and how so? Performance like aerobic, performance in like psychological, how we perceive ourselves. And so with chapter 12, this goes into a little bit more detail, getting some different categories of what is actually improving or getting worse for individuals with like high self-concepts and or low self-perceived motivations. So self-concept, going into more detail, is basically how we view ourselves with self-confidence, self-worth, acceptance, overall competence, and ability, or actually ability to do something. And so picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Cat sees himself as like depressed, skinny, looks ugly, or do we look at ourselves and see that, we're a lion? Don't get overwhelmed by this picture of self-concept. It's actually pretty simple. It's basically just seeing between two different concepts of how we perceive ourselves and how we perform. So does performance affect how we perceive ourselves? Or does how we perceive ourselves affect performance? Spoiler alert for the end of the PowerPoint. It seems that they both affect each other, both dependent on each other. But in general, the structure of self-concept is we have our academic, so something pretty concrete where we can look at our grades between different categories, English, history, math, and we can see like on these grades, are they good or bad, A, B, C, and D? Then we can go to the individual and say, hey, do you think you're doing good in these different sciences? Pretty concrete, easy to compare. Ones that are a little bit more elusive is our non-academic. So it's kind of hard to measure physical self-concept, emotional, and social. They do a pretty good job in this chapter. But of the social, we'd be looking at peers and significant others. Emotional would be like particular emotional states. Depression, or depressive, I guess, negative, anger, happiness, fulfillment, and then physical ability and physical appearance for physical self-concept. And so of these variety of sources, some are more superficial and less elaborated on, but just as important. So the self-concept has also been shown to have a temporal component, so the possible self as representing hopes, fears, goals, and threats that can influence and drive future behaviors. Cool. How do we measure it? How do we define it? So the Physical self-concept, or PSC, is an important mediator of outcomes in physical education. So we kind of talked about how some of these different questionnaires and quantitative measurements go hand in hand between athletes and academics. Recent research has demonstrated that PSC contributes to improving levels of physical activity and skill development associated with physical education classes beyond what can be explained by prior measures of skill and activity. So a bunch of mouthful of words here is basically just saying, I don't know why this is on a timer, I apologize. It's basically saying that we can get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of what actual skills are being improved, what actual physical self-concepts are being improved. And so they developed a questionnaire that has good validity. So we know validity, right, is we're measuring what we're supposed to be measuring, of physical appearance and physical ability. We can see on the right, this table, students' perceptions of their skills and interests in sports, games, and physical activities. This questionnaire of the SDQI. We have physical appearance. We can get a questionnaire of seeing how they see themselves as attractive, their parents compared to others. It covers questionnaires through the relationships with the opposite sex, peers, same sex, the students' perceptions of their own honesty and reliability. We have spiritual values and religion, emotional stability, global esteem, math, school, problem solving. So a lot more categories this time around, right? Ones that we can create more finite perceptions of, as opposed to just, is the environment positive? Do we have high self-concept with, do you feel good about yourself or bad? Is it normative where you compare yourselves to other and healthy or unhealthy? We can get more into the nitty-gritty of like, what are values and how does that relate to like religion? How are your relationships with the opposite sex? How are your actual relationships with peers? It's a lot more concrete. The different scales they'll have is like appearance. So how do we feel about, are we good looking? Are we strong? Do we say that we're strong? What is our conditioning like? Flexibility, health, coordination, activity, body fat, being actually good at sports. Do we feel positive about oneself or negative about oneself? And so this in keeping with the construct validity approach, where theory, measurement, and actual research create a feedback loop between each other, furthering the understanding and development of a actual construct of what physical concept is. So instead of just listening to me lecture all day of what we think physical concept is, we can actually take measurement now and empirical research. We can give questionnaires, we can do different studies and actually get some ratings. Are we highly likely to feel good about ourselves, highly unlikely, and what does that look like? So we kind of talked about children, right? And we talked about the academic side. What about elite athletes and non-elite athlete groups? And so they found that there could even go into a further degree of explanation, that instead of just talking about, do we feel strong, do we feel good, the athlete is probably going to relate themselves, how they feel, based on how they do in their sport. And so this whole being good at sports is a bit vague, so they created a questionnaire that actually takes a look at what is being good at the sport. Are they perceiving themselves as skillful and technical? And so it can go even more detailed. If I keep using the soccer example, can I do a agility test well? Do I score a high amount of points in my games? Then we take the perception of our body, so that physical appearance. Newsflash, it does seem athletes have a, what's the word I want to use? They are harder on themselves about how they actually appear and look compared to non-athletes. We can take a look at the aerobic and anaerobic performance. So now we're starting into some physiological terms, right? So instead of just perceiving ourselves as good at a sport, or we're having good performance, we can actually start to test, okay, we asked you a questionnaire on how you view yourself and how you view your team, and then we test on these aerobic and anaerobic parameters. Does that follow? Are you actually good here? We have mental competence, right? So I have better mental skills, commitment, discipline. Do I feel like I have better emotional control? Highly likely, highly unlikely. And then performance. Do I believe I'm an excellent performer based on all these? Do I actually feel like I can put it all together? And so recent research has demonstrated that these different questionnaires, like the PSC or the ESDQ, contribute to improving levels of physical activity and skill development associated with physical education classes, beyond what can be explained by prior measures of skill and activity, right? So we can see that these different questionnaires can actually start to show a relationship between, all right, I have better skill development because I perceive I am doing well in the sport, or I perceive I'm doing well in the sport because my skill development is high. Getting into how we actually perceive ourselves, we have mental imagery, right? So how we look at our performance, how we look at our relationships, how we view the world. The process of improving this and the importance of practicing mental imagery is that he or she can use their imagination to perform a movement or a certain skill. So we can actually work on that skill acquisition just within our brain. And you can think outside the box here of not just athletes, but also like career-wise and being an adult. If I run through scenarios in my head of how an interview is going to go and how I should answer, I am practicing a skill. I'm practicing communicating. And therefore, I'll probably do better when I get to the interview. And so the benefits, right? Performance, confidence, skill acquisition, flow, concentration, and a less likelihood of injury, right? If we have a higher skill acquisition through mental imagery, probably have less chance of injury. And so for this internal perspective, we have internal imagery and external imagery. How I view myself on the inside doing a task. So if I close my eyes and I think I'm in my backyard and I'm going to sprint, I had this internal imagery of me moving through that space. And then we have external imagery, so how he or she sees themselves through the lens of a camera. A high image ability is able to create very detailed pictures, like we can almost reproduce smells, noises, and feelings. And low might have a really tough time actually reproducing that in our imagery abilities. This is important, right? Because this imagery intervention is practicing a skill set. It is practicing reps. Is it as beneficial as actually doing them, actually going to the interview or practicing that sprint? Maybe not. But if we think about availability, I am on my way to the interview in the car, I can practice then and there, right? I can practice what questions I'm going to be asked before I actually walk in for the interview. So, talking about the guidelines like coaches can develop for imagery interventions. So you guys, taking away from this class, what could I do for myself, as well as what I could do for my kiddos or my athletes or what have you, my clients, is this PETT-LEP approach of I'm going to create imagery interventions for the physical, the environment, the task, the timing, the learning strategies, the emotions we'd feel, and the perspective, right? So a physical task, we use me sprinting in the backyard for sprinting. What is the environment there, and not just physical environment, like am I going to be on grass or pavement, but also the emotional, and that kind of ties into the emotion as well. What the task is I have to do, the timing of it, how long is it going to take, what is, how fast should I talk or not talk, we have the learning, how would I learn from this? Is my mental imagery actually benefiting me, or do I have like a low skill set where I can't reproduce these scenarios in my head? And then we talked about emotion kind of already, and then perspective. Putting it in perspective, is this making me better? Is this mental imagery improving my self-concept? And so it outlines these different principles, giving into the example of you can give them like an audio file or an imagery script to help them like practice. Like, I said athlete here, but one off top of my head, like audio file, you can go on YouTube and listen to basic interview questions. And you can sit there and you can answer to a computer screen. You can look at yourself through a camera to get external imagery, right? And then important for athletes to have individual scripts depending on their needs. Everyone is different, right? So those individual differences do matter on how we want to create this environment. Do I want to focus more on the task for my athlete to imagine in their head? Do I want to change the perception and the emotion? Like, hey, I want you to imagine an interview and you feel happy that this is a opportunity. Whether you get it or not, you get to learn from it. Some other examples / instructions you can give is, hey, athlete, I want you to wear the clothes you're going to compete in. Or MMA athlete, will put on the boxing gloves early, the MMA gloves early. And you're going to walk around, you're going to practice in those. The exact ones you're going to use, not the ones you use in training. For better enhancement, we're going to practice on the field that the game's on, not just a field. We'll actually go to the soccer fields themselves. And so, pivoting back, getting back from, all right, these are some mental imagery, things that we can do to improve self-concept, looking at how self-concept relates to performance. We have some different studies that found some different belief models that self-concept primarily determines academic achievement, and therefore they make some assumptions that would probably do athletic achievement too. So we can see that one is independent of the other, right? Self-concept, academic achievement is independent of self-concept. That if the academic achievement is high, the self-concept may or may not be affected. Here, they're saying if the belief models and that self-concept primarily determined academic achievement, if my self-concept is high, my academic achievement is affected. Below, that was lots of words there, I apologize. Below, Marsh and colleagues, along with Du Bois and Valentine and Cooper, found that it's probably not 1 equals 1, that high self-concept equals high academic achievement, and not vice versa. That is reciprocal. That self-concept, I perceive myself as I can do this. This is fun. I will do all right. I'll have higher performance. And then if I do have high performance, it then solidifies, okay, I feel good about this. I did do well. I am doing great. It's that, again, that circle, right? They are in relation to each other. They are both dependent of each other. So, a little bit longer of a lecture, almost 30 minutes. I apologize. I will upload this for you guys, and the assignment, it's not that long. Just kind of looking at how you would rate your own experiences from a 1 to 7 of highly likely or highly unlikely, disagree or agree with cooperation in the sports you've been involved in, the positive motivations, etc. So, I hope everyone has a good day, and goodbye.